At 6:31, I'm going to call this meeting of the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board to order. We have a quorum. Tonight, Becky Jakes is not going to be joining us, as she is way out of time zone and could not Zoom into this meeting. So I'd like to call the meeting and ask for any public comment on items that are not on the agenda.
I've got a question, Jeff. Do I count as public comment? I
Okay.
assume I do.
I don't know, John. I don't know if you count as public.
Is dispatch going to be at all a topic in any of this, given the fact that a forum's coming up, et cetera?
That's a great question. I had thought that dispatch was coming onto this, and until you mentioned it just now, I had not noticed that it hadn't come onto this. So the answer to your question is no, since it's not announced.
Okay.
You could certainly, you could talk logistics if you need to at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, my question would be kind of, it's kind of logistically related a little bit. Yes.
As long as we don't get into content of the forum.
No, I don't think that's part. It's not that.
Okay, fine. Any other public comment? Okay. Yeah, I'll do that at the end. That's the chair has no special report. I think we should go right into Pine's presentation about the Reed Masconomo dock configuration. Brian, you want to take it away?
Yes, hi, sorry about that. I do have a picture that I'd be happy to share if it's okay to share on the screen.
Go ahead.
I'll see if it actually works. Oh, looks like it might. So here's the whole facility as it exists and as imagined. The original portion of Reed Park was put in at the request of a lot of residents who were frustrated by the fact that they couldn't get into the Reed Park docks, use their own facility on any weekend day because of the overwhelming number of transient boaters that were coming in. And so the idea behind this part of the facility, of the current facility, was to address the inability for locals to get to their own dock. It's been, I think it's been wildly successful. We made approaching $50,000 last year, north of 45, with a horrible rainy July. So the facility has accomplished several things. It's taken a part of the harbor that was unusable by residents during the summer, and a bit of a wild west situation with the fishermen's facility overwhelmed with transient boaters, and brought them all over to Reed Park. And with the staffing, this area of the harbor is actually well managed and no longer a concern. It took some heat when we put it in for two things: putting the facility on pilings, which some folks didn't like, and heat from other folks who thought that this facility should have gone down all the way to the drawbridge. So with that in the back of my mind, thinking that someday it might be appropriate to bring that up, it really has become an important issue given what it's going to take to fund the harbor going forward. In a couple of decades, it seems unlikely to me that state and federal funds will be as readily available as they have been over the last decade for projects like this, because primarily, I suspect, cities in the nation and communities and states trying to deal with sea level rise. So communities that have a funding source to maintain a harbor are fortunate. And having this real estate here along these railroad tracks that won't be developed for anything else is a real advantage that I can tell you many communities, harbor masters that I speak with are quite jealous of. If we do simple math on what the current facility brings in, the current funding rate, if we put in this additional 500 feet, it seems not unreasonable that we could attain $150,000 a year or $1.5 million a decade. And while that might not seem like a terribly large amount of money, it's a lot better than zero. It's also helps a lot with our boaters who have borne the brunt of most of the funding share costs for harbor projects since I've been around. And if this facility can provide state or federal match for any grants that may be available, or in the event that none are available, that money certainly would go a long way to dealing with seawalls and equipment and all the different parts of the harbor that need to be funded going forward. And certainly the fee structure that's in place now could be revisited and increased as amenities were put in here at the dock. On the end here, you'll see the square float where I would envision a Clean Vessel Act pump out station being housed. Manchester Marine has the current shoreside, but they're moving away from allowing the public to use it, which puts all the pressure on the town's pump out boat to take care of everyone who's not a Manchester Marine customer. With this facility here, if we put in a Clean Vessel Act pump out station with their current grant structure, our staff that are working the stock and assisting obviously people here, that grant pays for 75% of the cost at the current minimum wage of paying for staff that would work on the dock. So there would be a real savings and benefit to having that facility here. Why would we build now if the real financial impacts are 2 decades down the road? Because if we can start putting money aside through this facility to bankroll dredging, seawall repair, riprap, such as we have here and over behind Town Hall, that's going to be extremely helpful rather than going to the taxpayers and asking them to repair these things. The other part of this piece here, the fisherman's facility, which has been discussed, is currently being engineered by Fourth CLE. We would move up to 7 of our lobstermen here, head of the harbor. The lobstermen serve as a large part of the character of the community. And the other benefit is we've received over $1 million in grants because we have commercial fishermen in town. And I think it's vitally important that we keep fishermen here. This facility will help some of our older fishermen keep going longer. It already is with the two that are right here. And it'll also be an enticement for younger fishermen who might want to get into the fisheries and look for a community that is A, supportive, and B, may have some infrastructure that could benefit them directly. I do know one young man who's fishing for one of the highliners out of Gloucester who has some mooring in here. That operator's captain is thinking of coming back here if this facility is built. And he's told me that when he retires, his stern man, the young man working for him, will take over the boat and would like to keep it in Manchester. That's a positive for the waterfront. As far as the cost goes for this facility here, currently I know of two different grants that could be written. One is a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Big Grant, which paid for 73% of this facility here. The town's share of this facility was a little bit north of $50,000 for this right here. And then the other option also is the Seaport Economic Grant, which is helping with this here. With Tuck's Point, paid for 80% of the repairs to the wall here and to the Fisherman's Pier. It's not out of the realm of possibility that if the two grants could be dovetailed, that the town's cost could be, if not, then very near zero to put this facility in. I think that's all I can think of off the top of my head or with my notes here. Any questions, comments?
Any questions to the board? Ann?
Yeah. There are a number of dinghies, small boats on the inside. And historically, Reed Park has been a place where you could keep, rent a space and keep a dinghy. It's a long row around all of that thing.
It would be. So I would envision actually the dinghies being moved down here to this part of the dock. And then the access would actually be quite good. There's actually better water right here to get in and out than there is at either end of the current facility at all tides. When this was dredged, Lord knows back when, the dredge line is still right there, and there's good water very close to shore, better than along the rest of the edge of the facility. So I do think the dinghies should be moved down here.
Thank you.
I would also move the public safety boats down here. Also a slightly quicker jump off to get out the harbor. And when thinking about this facility as a whole and how to maximize it, there is a class of boat in the harbor, the 13 to 15 foot boats, which really don't have a home, that the town could think of putting in some small slips here to accommodate some of those as well. Just a thought, there are a lot of different ways to approach this. And the grant that we choose to be the overarching grant will have a lot to say about that. The federal grant does have restrictions. So it would depend on which funding route the town took.
John?
Yes, Bion, this is all kind of in the planning stage, I know. Do you have any kind of speculated timeline? That's a long dock. It's a lot of dock. What did you say?
Right. Yeah. So
yeah.
the section here that we did first is 250 feet. It was 10 additional floats. This here is 500 feet. So we're talking about 20 floats plus one. It's really about the engineering and permitting and whether or not we get grant funding to do it. If the town decided it wanted to move forward, I would have the discussion about which grant, but the Seaport Economic Council grant would be due November 1st. That's their date. And the big grant would be, if that's one we're going to apply for, if we were to, that one is due in September. Really kind of need to get going on that one right away, because that is very time-consuming, cumbersome grant, and I can't do that in just a couple of weeks. So I wouldn't imagine, if the town decided that this was going to become a priority, much would happen before spring of next year. That we wouldn't find out about the Seaport Economic Council grant until February. And likewise, the big grant, usually the announcements come out in February. So at that point, hiring the engineer wouldn't happen until late winter, early spring. And then year to year and a half for permitting. And once that's done, you can go to construction. So we're talking a year to a year and a half before we could hire a contractor.
And are the two different projects here? I mean, the one on the right side is largely kind of commercial oriented.
That is commercially oriented. This is to support the commercial fishermen and the fisheries and all that they bring to our grants. I can tell you that having this commercial facility over here helped get the big grant for the recreational facility here.
Okay, but each of these projects probably has their own timeline.
Correct. So we did receive a Seaport Economic Council grant for $132,000, 80% of the cost of the engineering and permitting for the fishermen's facility. And Seaport Economic Council grant made it clear if they were going to give us the grant for engineering and permitting, that we were to come to them when it was time for construction. They just don't fund both at the same time and tie up construction money. So that's, you can't say a sure thing, but we've been told that we're to come back when we're ready for construction. I would envision writing this grant for the fishermen's facility, if that's going to move forward, for November as well, so that we would have word again in February, late winter, early spring, about the funding for construction over here.
Okay, Ann, did you have another question?
How many moorings would this displace? Both of these?
So actually 0. This area here is our commercial fishermen's mooring field, and we're going to move 5 to 6 of those over here, and then with the appropriate placement, lining up the remaining boats, there'll actually be probably 3 fewer boats in total in this mooring field, laid out to create that nice channel for the boats to access this dock without any difficulty at all.
Okay,
The line does go across some boats.
Right, so this one here, this bow and stern moored boats here, and these 2 here. Once we move, and who knows, it could be 1 or 2 of these or 1 of these, or any one of these. Once you move those boats in here, wherever that happens, you're creating space in here. So really what happens is everybody gets to move a little bit closer to the commercial dock. They may be displaced from these specific spots, but they do not lose their spots in area 2, in the commercial fishing area. They will have a place.
Okay, Brian, I have one question, which is in terms of the clean vessel pump out station,
Yep.
what happens to the effluent that goes into that pump out station?
So as with Manchester Marine, it would be piped and plumbed. So part of this project would be for the engineers to figure out the cost of getting tied into the sewer line and getting the electricity into the park so that we can have electricity on the docks, A, to run the pump out station, and B, to have power posts so that the town can go up in the mooring fees. I'm sorry, the slip fees, the transient boater fees here for the overnight boats.
And do you have any way of predicting how much of a sewer connection that would be? Not the cost of building it,
Right.
in terms of the use of it.
I don't know. I could go to the Division of Marine Fisheries in Gloucester. They administer the program for the state. The federal government gives them the money and they administer it. So I would be glad to speak with that person. It's actually Cecil French. He's a resident here in town, about how many gallons they handle at that station each year. But I don't have an answer.
How many gallons they handled at the Gloucester station?
At the Manchester Marine.
At the Manchester Marine Station. Okay.
Right.
Which is currently going into our sewer system. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, it is.
All right. So
So
that's
this is just, so
that's
this
not
is a
net gain,
Yep.
except that we're going to have more traffic. The second
Yeah.
question. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry, coughing.
The second question that I had was, we're all concerned about sea level rise, and we're all concerned about the erratic nature of storms on the coast right now.
Mm-hmm.
This seems like a perfect place for some really good disaster picks. If there were a very significant storm that came in and all the water rushes to this end of the harbor, how does that get taken into account? I know better minds than mine in terms of marine building are in play here, but how does that get taken into account?
Well, I think that that's actually a superb question because this harbor hasn't suffered catastrophic hurricane since the 50s. I think the worst one was the hurricane of 38 back before there were, when the harbor looked more like this here, when there were no mooring fields and very few boats in the harbor. The railroad tracks here are where almost all of the engines for all of the boats that were still on moorings ended up. The density of boats in the harbor now is far greater. The institutional knowledge of what a category 2 or 3 hurricane looks like is almost non-existent, and it will be I can't use words to describe what this harbor would look like after Category 2 or especially 3 hurricane. This whole area was before the catch basin, obviously, for boat parts, and it would be again, depending on how many people were wise enough to get their boats out in the very short window that we have here. During the near misses we've put Area 7 boats, the area furthest out here on these docks, with the caveat that those boaters may need to actually set anchors off to help try to take some of the strain off the facility. It's on pilings. Pilings are the strongest, best means of securing docks. But as you point out, Jeff, a hurricane is just going to make a mess. Right.
Yeah.
So if it were me, one thing that the town could do certainly would be to have in place very heavy storm moorings that could be picked up and used by boats. If we're going to use this area as a safe haven, more tackle to help keep the boats from damaging the facility. Or worst case scenario, if we have a storm surge that goes over our pilings, which are engineered for far higher tides than we're getting right now, and everything comes loose, just maybe some of these boats in here wouldn't end up on Beach Street. There's no perfect way to deal with or predict just how bad it will be, but eventually it will be horrible beyond description. And it's going to be horrible beyond description whether this facility goes in or not.
Yeah.
And this facility can help fund a recovery.
Right, okay. All right, I'm going to take Charles's question and then let me just ask you, Brian, tonight you're looking just to inform the board about this?
Correct. That's all. This is just us to come in and talk about this. This is something that a lot of people have told me we should have done in the first place, not wanting to take too big a bite and really just meet the need. But I would say there's a little more urgency now to consider how to fund the harbor and harbor projects going forward.
Okay, let me take Charles's question and then we're going to move on to our next item. Charles?
Yeah, this is Chuck Houghton. I live on Oxpasture Road, if I'm supposed to say that. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Chuck, how are you?
Good. I had a couple of questions. Brian knows I'm not a fan of pilings. So
I do.
Pardon?
I do know that.
A lot of my questions are based on minimizing the visual impact on what's going on. So my first question is the extension that you have coming out to the pump out station. It's one thing to have pilings that have the railroad tracks as a backstop for the view, but with this other finger that's coming out now, it's kind of cutting across the harbor. Would they consider just not having that finger and putting the pump out at the end?
I would say that right now it's a clean slate, and any ideas, designs, plans could be put forth. This is just something that someone said to me, and I plopped the Clean Vessel Act facility in, knowing that we could get funding for staffing for this facility. So I would say, Chuck, that anything is open for discussion right now.
Okay, I guess now is the time to ask questions. The other one about the visual impact is the number of pilings. Like when they did Tux Point, they basically put twice the density pilings as they did at Reed's Park. So when they do install the pilings, will they have one of their goals is to minimize that impact, minimize the number of pilings is one of the design goals.
Well, so we can certainly tell them that that would be one of the desired attributes, but ultimately the number of pilings will be up to the engineers and the permitting agencies. So I think we can express an opinion and a desire and see what an engineering firm comes back with.
Okay, yeah, because the pilings at Reed's Park are like 45 feet apart. At Tex Point, they put them like 25 feet apart, and I couldn't really get a good answer out of the engineering firm why they did that. But that's a lot more visual impact with the more pilings you have, and hopefully they'll be the smaller diameter pilings that they're going to have at Reed's Park, not the fatter ones they're having at Tux Point. But that's
So
That's a bit down in the weeds, Chuck.
yep. Okay, sorry about that. I'm done.
Thank you.
thanks, Chuck.
Okay. We look forward to, being kept in a loop on this in terms of where you're going with it and what comes from your engineering studies. That would be helpful to know. And perhaps invite you to come back and talk a little bit further about it as you go into the grant process itself. So
Sure.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'm happy to start moving ahead if that is the desire. I'm not 100% sure that is the direction that we want to start investing money in this. I'm ready to start if that is the will of the town. But I do think I need a little guidance.
Okay.
As far as that goes, whether or not you do want me to pursue it.
So you've already done engineering and the beginning of permitting for the commercial leg?
Yep.
Okay. And so what you're looking for here then is whether we want you to go ahead and do engineering and the beginning, at least identification of permitting for the recreational leg.
Correct.
Okay. So Sarah Mellish.
May I make a suggestion that perhaps Brian should make a presentation to the Finance Committee to better understand what we might be committing to on this project as far as town funds before he proceeds?
I would agree with that. I'd like to suggest that you do that next, and then from there, the Board of Selectmen can, the Select Board can proceed to support what you're saying based on some input from the Finance Committee.
Great. Yep, absolutely. I'll reach out to the Finance Committee and get on
And
the agenda for a meeting.
okay, and we're really clear, Brian, that time is of the essence, even though you're talking about something that wouldn't even be contracted for a year and a half, that the lead times on this and the grant submission times on this are in terms of grant writing time imminent.
Yeah, the big grant, especially if I can't start on that fairly soon, then I won't be submitting that until a year from this September.
Yep. Okay.
Last time I wrote one, I was on vacation while I was finishing it. So it's a big grant.
How can we time that with your vacation?
Let me. The sooner I start writing, the better.
Sarah, you're still here. How soon could he get onto the agenda with the Finance Committee?
I'll have to poll the committee to, we don't have a meeting scheduled, so I'll have to poll the committee to schedule a meeting in May.
Okay.
I'll send an email to you, Sarah, and then you can let me know if and when.
Okay, good. So moving on to the next item. We have two short-term paying guest accommodation license applications. Celine Clonan and John Burkett. Celine, are you here?
Hi, I am Rachel. I'm representing both Celine and John, or John might be on here, but I manage the properties and they both live abroad. So
Okay. Then the first issue with this application is that short-term licenses are for owner-occupied residential premises.
so they do occupy the property at times, but then the times where they're not there, they're renting it.
And what's at times? Can you tell me more specifically what that means?
Yeah, so like different weeks at a time that they would not be here, they would be renting it out. So like some weeks in May, it differs between both of them because they're two separate houses.
But when you say sometimes they're here, is
Mhm.
that weeks out of the year, months
Yep.
out of the year?
Yep, weeks and months out of the year. Yeah.
More than 6 months out of the year?
I don't know if it's exactly 6 months or not. Is it that the requirement 6 months out of the year?
Actually, the requirement is owner occupied. We have permitted short-term licenses where owners aren't there all the time, but they're there substantial amounts of time. And you're saying they're living abroad.
Well, they both, so here and abroad. So when they're not here, they're renting it out.
Okay, so is there a reason why they're applying for short-term rental as opposed to doing longer term?
Because it's a mix of both. So in the summer months, it would be more of like the shorter terms. So less than 30 days. And then in the winter months, it would be longer terms.
Short-term in this license is 6 nights or less.
Oh. So I was under the impression it was 30 days when I spoke with the clerk.
Okay. 30 days is the state definition of short-term. Within Manchester, we have a more restrictive definition of 6 days. And this came up recently when we added a 3% local option surcharge. And there is a difference between the state rules and the Manchester rules, but for this particular license, it's maximum of 6 evenings or 6 nights stay. So if you're going over that, then you're in a different category.
Okay, so this license is for anything less than 6 nights stay. So are we permitted to have some parts of the year that are less than 6 nights stay? So it really is just like May, June, there would be a couple of those like less than 6 nights stay. So that's why I applied for the license.
Greg, you want to comment on that?
Well, so again, the bylaw says it's owner occupied. So we would need confirmation that the majority of the year, the owners are residing in the homes. So if any time that you want to rent for less than the 6 nights, then yes, you would need a license from the board to do so. But if you required a 6-night minimum, then you avoid the need for this license.
Got it.
7-night minimum.
Which
Isn't the
one is-
bylaw 6 nights or less?
I think it's less than 6 nights is the actual word.
Sorry, less than 6, yeah. So if it's a 6-night minimum.
Right.
Okay.
I mean,
So-
the intent here is that we don't want to turn neighborhoods into high turnover B&Bs.
Mhm.
And that may be the owner's desire, but from the residents, from the neighborhood's desire, we wish to, that's why this bylaw was written, was in part to protect the tranquility of residential neighborhoods. That they keep to week-long rentals, 6-night rentals. Or more.
All right.
So if they are intending to do less than that, then we would need to have some clear understanding that they were in occupancy most of the time.
Okay. So more than 6 months of the year.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So what do you want to do with your applications?
Can they just be tabled for now until I discuss with the owners?
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Anybody on the board have any other comments on that? No? We've done this, we've done it before, that we've given out applications for people who aren't owner occupied. But the bylaw in applicability, the first sentence in applicability says owner occupied residential premises. And I think we may need to do an amendment to the bylaw to become really specific about what that means.
If I recall, the last time that we ran into this, we got advice, I think that it was that the zoning board had used the number of 51% and that it was a definition of art or an accepted definition for owner occupied. And that's where we got that number originally. Sarah Mellish might remember that better than I.
That's a state definition of owner occupied as well, as my understanding.
Right, so you could choose to either adopt that or adopt some other percentage. But I agree that it would be helpful to have whatever percentage that you want to use as your baseline, actually put it in the bylaw.
Okay, Sarah?
I'd have to refresh my memory on the current bylaw, but I believe that owner occupied is significantly more than 51%. It basically only allows them to be gone for small absences. The only time it's come into play is when we've got employees of the owners in a space over a garage or carriage house. And generally, the owners are there almost the entire year. So there's no specific definition.
Okay. So perhaps during the summer, we could sit down and put our heads together about how we want to see that proceed in this particular bylaw. So that we're not giving broad ranges where there is no legal justification under the bylaw. Okay. That brought us back pretty quickly to schedule. And our next item on the agenda is discussion of the parking survey, and particularly specifically the inclusion of a question on outside dining in the parking survey. So as you are aware now, if you weren't previously, there are a variety of committees that are involved in this, but the lead on the survey is the Downtown Improvement Committee. And we have several members of the Downtown Improvement Committee here tonight to answer questions, but not to do a presentation. I had spoken to Steve Carhart, who's the chair of the committee, about whether they were going to include questions on outdoor dining. And the survey is nearly complete. And I had a long conversation with Marlene Dolan about the survey. It looks really good. It's going to provide us with some very important information about parking in downtown Manchester. But the primary purpose of our discussion tonight is whether or not to include a question concerning outdoor dining and how it should be phrased. So, are there any questions about what we're doing? Eli?
So no, not questions, but I was going to give you my comments about whether or not to proceed with the question.
Hold on 1 second. Let me ask Ann. Ann, do you have a question about what we're doing? The task we're approaching?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
To whom is the survey addressed?
The survey is addressed to residents of the identified downtown area that's on the map in the packet. Second page of the packet section on the survey. So it's residents in the very downtown core village and businesses.
Okay.
In that same area. It's not a survey that's going out to the entire town. Okay.
Thank you. I didn't read it carefully.
All right, that's okay.
Actually, that reminded me, I did have a question about the survey. The survey or the materials that were given to us said that the results of the survey would be anonymous and an aggregate form would be presented back. However, a number of the questions in there are clearly identifying questions. So I'm wondering how they were anticipating anonymizing it. And second, if the survey is returned and addressed and intercepted in any way by a town board, does that not make it a public record and therefore it cannot be entirely anonymized? Or if somebody wished to have it, they could as a public records request.
Okay. I think what they say is that no individual will be identified in the final report. The purpose of having names, emails, and phones of those who are filling it out and their roles is to do potential follow-up with them. But the actual way that the data will get reported out is in a final report will not have any names in it as to who participated and who didn't.
All right, you want comments now?
You had a two-part question, though, didn't you?
No, I think I can ignore the second part at this point.
Good. I will too then. Go ahead, Eva.
All right, so I think yes, that we should include this question in the survey. And the reason is at the time that we removed outdoor dining or shut it down last year, We did so because we told in part because the way we had it configured at the time, it had some significant downsides to it. It wasn't thought out for the long term. And we had told people when we first set it up in the raging midst of the early parts of the COVID pandemic that it was a temporary thing. And then when we shut it down, there was a lot of support for outdoor dining, or at least loud support for it. But we felt that there were deficiencies in the way we had it set up, that we didn't think that we wanted to support a permanent version of it. But we recognized that people had expressed a very large interest in it, so that we said that over the winter that we would look into the options for reestablishing it. And I think this is part of that process. And I think we said that we were going to do that, and I think that we should do it. And if the results of all that study come back and the board decides with the data that we get back, and actual data, not loud voices, then the board can make an informed decision one way or the other. The only way to do that is to go through the process.
Okay. John?
Yes, Jeff, I also think that we should include the outdoor dining question. It's a survey, and I think we should get as much information as we can about people's opinions. With regard to the outdoor dining question, though, I'm thinking maybe we should make a distinction between outdoor street dining and sidewalk dining. I mean, this obviously relates to street dining, not when you read the first few words of the question, but when you realize that it's a trade-off of parking, you know it's obviously street dining. But there's also the question of just dining on the sidewalk, which is possible for several of the restaurants there, and what people think about that. So I think it should be restructured a little bit to include that as a separate question.
I think in that this is a parking survey, that's why it's geared towards the street parking impacts of having outdoor dining.
Okay.
I don't know whether the DIP would feel like that was going beyond the purposes of their survey, the target of their survey, to include sidewalk dining.
And maybe it doesn't.
I'm sure that this questionnaire will stir up the people who are interested in outdoor dining, and we may get requests for outdoor dining. To date, we haven't had any requests from any restaurants to do this, as far as I know. Greg, is that still the case?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, the whole idea was that we expanded their dining, not to have this lovely option of dining on the street, but to get them through the fact that they couldn't go above 50% occupancy in the interior of their restaurant.
Huh?
Diane, could you please mute your
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
so that was why we introduced it in the first place, was to try and move towards 75, 80% occupancy of the restaurants, who otherwise were really going to be hurt. I don't know. I would ask Steve or Linda or Marlene about your reaction to including something that was a shade away from just the parking survey in this.
Well, if I might, the broad goal of what we're doing, and this is in conjunction with Sue Brown's office and the rapid recovery grant that is being done is trying to be as intelligent as possible about downtown parking to facilitate the vibrancy of our merchants and restaurants and nonprofit institutions. And our hunch is that if we're intelligent about it, we may find low-cost, elegant ways to maximize the availability of street parking for the people who participate with the merchants and the restaurants and the institutions, and facilitate it for the rest for the residents. And so the outdoor dining is certainly, to the extent that it's part of the parking question before us, we're glad to do whatever the board wants us to do with respect to the questionnaire. But, you know, we have, just so everyone is clear, what the broader goals of the survey are.
Okay, I think that's important to reiterate, Steve. And frankly, I think, John, to include that question, we're not going to get a representative sample of the town. We're only going to be getting this study area, which is the residents and businesses of the downtown area. So I think we should try and limit this discussion to just parking.
No, I agree from that perspective. It might be that there should be some sort of a parenthetical phrase or something that we're not talking about sidewalk dining at all. We're just really dealing with the street question. So that's fine. Another question that I had or have is, and Bayon's not here, but I do occasionally see people who launch boats at the launch. They have to park someplace. And sometimes they park on Pine Street. I don't have any problem with that, but that can affect parking availability. It's just around the corner. And I note on the map here that the stretch of road the scope for the parking study does not go to Pine Street. It goes several houses before that. And I'm just wondering if it should be included to go to Pine Street. It's just an observation. And I don't know what people do.
There's no parking. There's no parking down there, John. You mean including Pine Street itself?
Yeah, the first 50 yards. That's all.
Well, Steve, do you want to answer that, or Marlene? We're following.
I guess I have to be kind of a bureaucrat and say that we are the downtown committee, and our mandate covers a defined downtown area. And if we start going outside the area that we've previously been given a mandate to be concerned about, I don't know where we stop it or start it. So that's sort of where we are on as to what's included and what's not.
And we were asked to comply with the grant that's coming in, and they're going to be doing a survey of, how many spaces do we have? How long do people park in them? We want to do the exact same area, but our idea is to stimulate communication between the town committees and the property owners and business owners and so forth, so that we can combine the two. So we were basically limited. And I agree. I mean, there's some question marks. Should we be including Washington Street? And, are there any other areas? But we have to define it in some way. So, there's parking issues on Elm Street and, other areas, but we've got to limit it and make sure that we're in compliance with what the grant is doing.
Okay, and understand comparing apples to apples, and Elm Street was another thing I looked at, and there are commercial, there's a lot of commercial, I wouldn't say a lot, but there's some commercial stuff going on down there as well. But
right.
Yeah, it's true. And, we could have perhaps talked with Sue and the MAPC about adding Elm Street in, but we didn't feel we were in that position. So just to make matters as simple as pie, we decided to keep the survey scope and geography to be exactly equal to what the MAPC was. And we knew that if there was an interest in this, we could always go back and do an additional set of data collection.
Marlene, I think it would be helpful for this group to hear how it is going to be confidential and why, the way we're doing the survey. In other words, people's names are not going to be released. They're coming back to you, Gar, and me, who are the DIP committee members. We need to know who they are and where they are, but this is not something we're going to publicize. We're just going to use the data.
Yeah, I think Jeffrey got that point across earlier. And part of the reason we're asking for names and addresses is to make sure that the people who are answering are indeed in the geographic scope. And the second, to start to create a better list, because the list we have right now, the reason we're doing a physical mailing is that we just do not have email addresses for all these folk. So it's going to be, it would be terrific to have that in the future.
But they don't have to mail them back to us. They can still use the code on the letter we're sending them, and all the information will go back confidentially to us.
Okay, I want to share my screen because the question that's in our packet is not the final question that was developed. And can you see that, or is it too fine?
It's a little small, but.
All right, I can, let me try that again. No one ever accused me of being fast. Yeah. I may not be able to pump this up.
Is Jeff, do you want me to share?
Hang on one sec. No, I think I got it. Nah. You may be able to share it better than I can because I'm confined to the limits of the word processing software working with your questionnaire. So let me give you the option to share your screen. There you go. It's just a slight change in the question, and then there is a second part to the question that's verbal. Did you select your the screen that has the question on it, Marlene? You're muted. Marlene, you're muted. All right, let me go back.
Okay, can you see anything on my screen as yet?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's see, did you want me to?
I want you to open up the there. And
this?
yep, and if you can click on the on the down arrow on the editing ribbon on the right-hand side on the top of your screen? Is it down all the way over? On the editing ribbon here? Where it says reuse files and editor and dictate and all that? There's a little
Oh, yeah,
down
yeah, yeah,
arrow.
sorry, yep.
If you click on that, no, you want to click on, hit the X and also click on the triangle above it. The triangle right
Yeah,
there,
there you go. There you go.
and just click on it once. Hide access toolbar. Not wanting to show. Okay,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
I'll just,
It's okay. There you go.
That's good. So this is the content of the question now, which is similar to what you have in your packet, but the phrase at the end has been changed to up to 2 spaces per facility, because when we did outside dining and captured parking spaces on the street, we only did 1 for the mooring. And then secondly, there's please use the space below to provide any commentary on outside dining relative to parking. So those are the 2 questions that would be related to outdoor dining. And the question tonight to us is whether we like the idea of having that in this survey or not. And you have your hand up.
It's actually kind of an old question, and in fact, it is Eli's question. If these surveys are going back to a town committee, aren't they subject to public records request?
well, all the data, I mean, to be specific, so let me give you a little bit more and then perhaps that'll help you all determine the answer. So the way it works, Anne, is similar to the way we did the survey at the yacht club. So people go to the link and then all the data goes to the cloud, to a platform, and then I pull it down. And when I pull the data down, it comes into a big fat Excel sheet where you'll have name, address, etc. From that Excel sheet, we create the report and expunge any identifiers. So I guess is the Excel sheet.
You're getting data. Now, I do not know the legalities of it. I know it's very different from a yacht club, which is a private organization and doesn't have this problem.
But the downtown improvement committee was the one collecting the data. Yeah.
The downtown improvement committee collected the data from the yacht club survey?
No. I was trying to use that as an example of
right, but that's
agreed.
Let me check with council to get some advice on how
That'd be great.
best to handle it.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, but let's please stick to this question, this limited scope question about our discussion. I understand the concerns around around public access to the full results of the survey. That's a question for town council to straighten out for us. Do we want to proceed to have this question included in this survey?
I think so.
Eli?
Yeah, I already said, yes.
Yes, okay. John?
Yeah, and I already said yes.
Okay, I don't think this takes a formal vote of the board. The consensus of the Board of Selectmen is to include the question and the 2 questions as written. And we'll look forward to those results. But before we move on, Sandy raised her hand while we were talking, and I would like to recognize her. Sandy, could you please state your full name and your address?
Thanks. Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. I work in the market research industry, and there are rules beyond town rules and government. There's a lot of regulations now on the storage of personal data with surveys. So you might want to look at that as well. The other comment was, is this survey still in development? Who can I be in touch with to try to help? I have some, a couple major things in that if you're asking people to spend the time to do this kind of survey, you're getting just a few bits of data regarding, a couple extra parking spaces here or there. You could be asking about the time that they're open and they need to have more parking spaces versus not. If any of their employees need to park in any other locations where that may be. There's an opportunity to add a few questions here that I think will give a lot of insights.
There's a lot, Sandy, there's a lot more to the survey than what we've seen or talked about tonight.
Right. So is there a way that someone can be in touch and get a copy of the full survey?
I think that you'd have to talk to Steve about that.
We are working with Town Planner Sue Brown under her guidance as to following all of the appropriate regulations, and the survey itself, I'm sure, is publicly available at some point. We will follow whatever the regulations are. I guess I would just echo Jeff's comment that the issue, as I understand it before the board, is just this particular item, not the survey as a whole.
Yes.
So it's part of the rapid recovery program, which has its own standing and processes.
So
I guess I would suggest that.
Steve and Linda.
Excuse me?
So I should be in touch with Steve and Linda?
Sure.
You can be in touch with Steve.
Okay.
Okay. Just so that you're aware, Sandy, Marlene has credentials in survey construction. And the discussion that she and I had about it left me with no questions about her capacity for building a survey.
I'm not doubting that. I'm just like,
okay,
bringing up those issues, and also the concern of parking, even if we have all those slips and other kinds of things that you can build into it. So thank you.
okay, thank you, Sandy. Sarah, do you have a specific question about the outdoor dining question on the parking survey?
I have a point of information. The full survey is up under the meeting packets for the Board of Selectmen for tonight's meeting.
That was not supposed to happen.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that is not the way that the survey appears. Those are questions. That's some of the text. It's not the way the survey is constructed. That was my first impression when I saw that PDF. And then I've actually seen the actual survey itself, and it's not constructed that way at all. It's a very professionally constructed survey. And it's done in software that is survey software. And capturing a PDF of survey software yields the results that you see that are in our packet. So that's why I didn't want that. And it wasn't that I was trying to hide anything about the survey. It was, that's not the way it shows when you actually see it. So I think our business on this question are done. And I appreciate the three of you coming in and the time that you're putting into this. This is a really important study that's being done overall, and the survey is a very important part of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is planning and zoning. And here we have a quagmire that we have yet to jump into. And raise this as a question, since there were three parts of the zoning bylaw that the planning board wanted to move out into the general bylaw per the recommendation of their legal consultant and their own consensus in terms of these three bylaws. The bylaws of the stormwater, junk car, and curb cuts. Not necessarily in that order. So the information that we've been given is kind of a, let's see if it's not the way that I don't think it's the way that the bylaws would be written. In fact, there are significant questions that I have about it when it comes to certain aspects of it. The biggest question I have is related to this, to the process of curb cuts. And we've been talking for a long time about shifting the responsibility for dealing with this over to DPW. That the planning board has had to deal with it on a permit basis, and that it's been something that they feel is outside of their purview when the town engineers and DPW are much more knowledgeable about this particular area. So shifting this out of the zoning bylaw does move DPW into the position of authority. But the follow-up question to that is, what's the appeal if their authority is to be questioned? Do they appeal to the planning board, or do they appeal to the select board? Since the select board generally deals with the bylaws. So those are questions that I had about this. I don't know what your questions are. Yeah.
Okay, I think that in the curb cut section on the third to last paragraph, curb cuts that don't comply, ... may be permitted if a special permit is granted by the planning board.
Right. This was a recommendation of two members of the planning board. And the question is whether we want that to stay there, or we want to be the ones that are reviewing something that has to do with the general bylaw.
If I may, the planning board has a great deal more expertise in this area than I do. And I would be much more comfortable making them organization that offers special permit for this in this.
Okay. John, Eli?
Yeah, I think I feel similarly.
No, I defer to their expertise. I live with
Okay.
this daily or weekly anyway.
If you think curb cuts are complicated, if you've read the section on stormwater, it's much more significantly involved than curb cuts. So are there any comments on stormwater? If you look under applicability, A, on stormwater, under 615-3, it says, I'm not going to read the whole section, but the very end of A says, if it's greater than 1 acre of land draining to the town's municipal separate storm sewer system without a special permit from the planning board. They didn't take that out. So I have a question about that as to whether that should be, how that's going to work. Yeah.
You muted it.
Thank you. It's my understanding that these are being removed from the zoning bylaw section because it tends to govern things that happen when a building is being constructed. And that these are problems that come up can come up after or separate from anything that requires a building permit. And the goal is to make it possible to enforce these outside of the general area of a curb cut, of a building permit, of building construction. And it's not that the planning board thinks they're not capable of handling these. They think that they're not capable of enforcing them outside of a specific area. So I don't have any problem with allowing them to continue to make the fine decisions.
So this particular applicability is that no person may undertake a construction activity, including clearing, grading, and excavation that results in a land disturbance. And then there's some definitions about what the acre of land is, whether it's part of a larger common plan. Without a special permit. So that's the application that you're talking about here. The construction activity.
Construction activity could be a landscaping.
Well, if you look down under exemptions, there's an exemption from maintenance of existing landscaping with a single family dwelling. If you're turning over an acre of land on a commercial or multifamily dwelling, then that wouldn't apply. That exemption wouldn't apply.
So I might suggest that to really get into the details of this, it would be helpful to have DPW check in with us, as well as a representative from the planning board. So tonight I think we were just trying to get these three in front of you. And
without getting into the weeds any further, I'm just raising some of the questions that I have.
Sure.
I think require that we have that kind of input before we can endorse moving these over into general bylaws. To clarify the boundaries with the planning board.
Yep. No, that makes sense.
And to clarify, we need to make a final decision on this by our next meeting, correct?
Yes.
If you want them to go forward on June 11th.
So one of the things that I discussed earlier today with Greg was that we could accept the recommendation of the planning board, accept the bylaws as written to be moved into the general bylaws, and then find out whether there are areas such as what defines owner occupied in our earlier conversation that need to be more fine-tuned, and make recommendations to make those changes at a later date. Because of the timelines that we're working in, and the fact that the planning board is not going to pay a lot of attention to these 3 articles, they've got a lot bigger fish to fry. So any thoughts about that? Because Eli's right, we need to move this forward with a vote to accept as is or amend by the end of our next meeting, which is on May 17th, May 16th.
So Jeff, question. So the jurisdictional move to move this is probably more involved than getting into the details of what needs to be modified in terms of votes that are required.
I was with you right up until you said in terms of the votes that are required. So could you
In terms of what is needed to make the appropriate changes.
the move to put these articles, to change these articles from the zoning bylaw to the general bylaw, I believe is a 2/3 vote, as with any changes in the bylaws.
Right.
Luckily for us, Alan Wilson's hat is here. And I believe he's behind that hat somewhere. Alan, are you there? There. Can you confirm, Alan, that this would, as with all the other articles that have to do with changes in the zoning bylaw, would have to be passed by a 2/3 vote? You need to unmute yourself, Mr. Wilson, please.
Most zoning bylaw changes have to be adopted by a 2/3 vote. There are a small number that require only a simple majority under the recently passed amendment to Chapter 40A. I don't think this is one of them. So this would be a 2/3.
Okay, so we'll go on the assumption it's a 2/3 vote.
Yeah,
And we need-
very limited exceptions to that.
Okay. Does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, I guess it answers half of it. And then if the bylaws get changed, in other words, reviewing this in more detail at a future date and modifying that, is that also a 2/3 vote, or is that just a majority vote? Or
It's all, any change to the bylaw would be a 2/3 vote.
everything's 2/3 right down the line?
Everything, let's, for our business, assume that
Okay.
everything's 2/3. There are some exceptions according to what Alan just said, but
The exceptions have to do with the recently adopted amendments which relate to things like the MBTA multifamily housing within a half a mile of the train station and so forth. But most zoning amendments still require 2/3.
But if you adopt it as a general bylaw and want to modify the general bylaw, then down the road, that becomes a majority vote only.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All amendments to the general bylaw are simple majority.
Okay, yeah, I guess that was the crux of my question, yes. So,
Thanks, Greg.
yeah.
And
Can we move these from the zoning to the general bylaws in a single action, or do we need to remove them from the zoning bylaw and then adopt them in the general bylaw?
I think the planning board's preferred sequence is to first adopt them in the general bylaw by a simple majority, so that we know that they're in place in the general bylaw before deleting them from the zoning bylaw. And then it would be a 2/3 vote to delete them from the general bylaw, from the zoning bylaw.
So what happens if that 2/3 vote fails?
Well, then you would have redundant duplicative provisions in both the general and the zoning bylaws.
And this more strict would govern. So in the case of the curb cut, for example, if it was not deleted from the zoning bylaw, all curb cuts would still have to be reviewed by the planning board.
Well, that would be interesting.
Yes, I have a lot of faith that the voters won't do that.
so then the question before us tonight, besides becoming better educated about this in terms of those areas that may need to be changed in the future, is whether we would be willing to support this and whether we can get the attention of one of the planning board members to come here and talk to us about concerns that we might have about these. But I don't think that we can go through a long process like they have of modifying their recommendation. And ultimately, this may come down to just going ahead and voting to put this into the general bylaw and then working out the kinks as we go along.
Jeff, question.
Even though that's not the ideal way to do it.
I have a question, Jeff.
Yes.
At this point, the planning board has simply said these 3 paragraphs or 3 topics, they recommend that they move to the general bylaws. They have not provided any kind of information about how they might be changed or updated or opinion in that regard. It's just in terms of just a jurisdictional opinion.
I think that they've done, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they've done some modifications to the content that you see here.
Oh, okay.
That would go into the general bylaw.
Yes,
All right.
they have. They have.
So they've tried to wring out some of the kinks that they thought were already in these, and that and anticipate what they might be under the general bylaw.
So I think what would be helpful is to get sort of a Reader's Digest version of why they made the changes they did, why they're recommending what they're recommending.
That would be helpful. We don't want to have to go through the same reasoning all over again and come to the same or a different conclusion, but
Yes.
Sarah?
I just wanted to raise the board's awareness that the date, I think the public notice was issued on Friday. That may put a hold on ZBA decisions. I'm trying to look at everything to see whether we can continue ahead with reviewing applications. They've changed all of the provisions for issuing a special permit. So I just want the board to be aware that if they're more restrictive, if they're less restrictive, we can proceed. If they're more restrictive, we have issues. So I just got them on Friday. I'm trying to look at them and figure out where we stand. And we'll be sending them to Greg to go to town council. There could be an uproar. And we're on hold until the Attorney General approves any changes.
After town meeting.
Yeah, if whatever town meeting votes for, then we're still on hold until the Attorney General approves changes, if they impact our applications. But the changes are completely changing what we have to require in our applications. And we did not receive advance notice. So we're working on it.
Okay. So the plan from here is to ask someone from the planning board, is it reasonable to ask them to come on the 23rd, Greg? Excuse me, on the 16th?
16th. Yes, I believe their hearing on all of this is on the 17th and 18th, I want to say. Let's check that.
So maybe what we do is.
Greg, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
the
right.
17th, yeah.
17th
and
and
18th.
possibly continue to the 18th.
Okay,
So-
so my thought would be that we then move to have a planning board rep come to us on the 6th of June. So that we can make a recommendation as to whether we support or not the move of these articles.
Did you mean the 6th of June, Jeff?
I did.
Okay,
Why you're asking?
because it's only 5 days before the town meeting.
And it's also, given what the planning board has to do between now and town meeting and the statutory requirements that they have to follow to do it, I don't see pulling one of them off the case on the 16th to come in and talk to us about our concerns going forward on this.
I understand. I was just thinking that that's a relatively short time.
Yes, I understand. That's what we
Okay.
have, is a relatively short time.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I mean, Alan, the board has expressed a consensus that they would like to have some input from the planning board about what the changes were and how the updated articles are coming into the general bylaw. Eli,
Yeah, so I think you want to make a decision on the 16th and not later. I think if you wait till after the 16th, you're going to have a different board, and you're going to have to educate the new board member on all the
new board members.
discussion. Yeah. And I think you don't necessarily want to set that hassle up.
That's a good point, Eli.
So I can talk to the planning board to see if the 16th could work for them, at least one person. And or have Sue Brown attend. She could speak on their behalf if we can't get a planning board member.
This is not a subject on which I have any standing to suggest, but I think having a planning board member would be important, not having Sue Brown represent the planning board.
No, I agree that'd be first choice.
Okay, we can ask. I'm just thinking that they're going to be flat out on the 16th and 17th if their final deadline is the 18th. But we can still ask. They can say no. And we could also plan to have a meeting on just this issue of the Board of Selectmen and a planning board member on a date like the 12th. Let me talk to Ron about what's best. I see the smile here. I'm going to get you in as many meetings as I can before you are out of here. And
Just to be clear, we would include Chuck Dam as well as somebody.
yes,
So
yes,
that's important.
yes. But I also assume that Chuck Dam, well, maybe not. I'm not going to make any more assumptions. Okay, so I will talk to Ron and see whether we can get somebody for the 16th. If we can't, I don't know when Becky's back. In terms of, I can look it up, but does it make sense to try and do this on the 12th or maybe the 19th? No, because the 19th we run into the problem that Eli raised. So let me just pull the board. Ann, are you available for a single agenda issue? A single agenda item on May 12th?
For you, Jeff, anytime.
No. Let's not personalize this. This is the board, and I'm trying to get the best decision out of this board, and it's a little pulling teeth time.
I am available any evening for if the Board of Selectmen needs me.
Okay. What about the select board? Is that okay too?
Sorry.
I've done it several times tonight. Don't worry. John?
Yeah, I'm flexible. I also note that that's the evening of Hamilton's planning board meeting.
Ugh. Yes, it is.
And we know that topic.
Yes, it is.
Schedule it before that.
But yeah, I'm flexible the whole day, whatever you'd like to do.
I believe that Hamilton board meeting starts at 7.
Schedule us for 6.
Yeah, we could schedule for 6.
I know.
It also gives us a time limit so that we're not meandering around in this.
Yay.
And then we'll have meetings on the 13th and the 14th and the 15th and the 16th.
Yep. You'll have trouble getting a quorum.
We'll have the Eli Bowling Subcommittee meetings. Okay, so if necessary, 6 o'clock on the 12th, preferred the 16th at our regular meeting.
Jeff or Greg, I'm not sure which of those meetings I should attend. If one of you would let me know, so I put them on my calendar, I would appreciate it.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. The second issue related to the planning board is the issue of Article 7 as an amendment to the general bylaws to essentially change the planning board from an elected board to a appointed board appointed by the select board. And this was voted on by the planning board some time ago. And it was favored by 5-2. And this would be included as an article in the June town meeting. The one concern I have is that, well, there's several concerns that I have about this, but let me hear from the board first.
Jeff, I'll note that Alan raised his hand a moment ago in response to this. Maybe you might defer to him for a moment.
I will definitely defer to Alan at any moment. Go ahead, Alan.
Well, not necessarily at every moment, but I just want to say this can't be accomplished by an amendment to the general bylaw. I've had extensive email exchanges and conversations with town council about this, and there are basically two options to accomplish this. One is under two statutes, general laws. I think it's chapter 41, sections 1B and 2, but I don't hold me to those citations. One statute relates to reducing the number of planning board members from 7 to 5, and the other relates to changing the term from changing from an appointed board to an elected board. The complications of that.
From an elected board to an appointed board.
That's right. I'm sorry. The complications of when you put those two statutes together is that you wouldn't accomplish the change until the annual town election of 2024. When you put them together, the two statutes together. The second option is to petition the general court, the legislature, for a special act allowing the number of members to be reduced from 7 to 5 and the change from elective to appointive to happen at the same time. That would, there is the disadvantage of that is that you don't know when the state legislature will act on the proposed home rule amendment, but it almost certainly would be faster and more expeditious than delaying the whole process until after the 2024 annual town election. And it could accomplish the whole change at once, because if you proceed under the two statutes, each elected planning board member is entitled to stay in office until their current term expires. So the statutory process is basically a mess. And town council and I are agreed that it's basically a mess. So the better way to go is to if you want to go that way, is to introduce an article for this special town meeting that would authorize the selectmen to petition the legislature for a special act, making the change both in the number of board members and in the way they are selected from elected to appointed. And once the legislature adopts the legislation, it would be implemented on whatever schedule was included in the proposed special act. I hope that's clear. It's a pretty complicated subject, but I'll be happy to take questions.
Okay, Eli?
Yeah, I do have a question there. One of the options I think you covered, but I'll rephrase it and you tell me which option covers it and whether or not, well, let's just go with that. So the option wherein you allow the existing planning board members to run out their terms. You take attrition until you reach 5, and then as the remaining members attrit, the select board replaces them.
No, you have to let them run out their terms, and under the statute that provides for reducing the number from 7 to 5, the town meeting vote that approves that has to specify annually what number of planning board members will remain in place. So if that were adopted at the special town meeting, it would say that one member will have an expiration in 2023, say, and the second member would have the expiration in 2024, and so though whatever term, and since there are more than one term, more than one member's term who expires, that expires in each of those years, you'd have to decide which one that would be. But the statute that allows for changing from an elected board to an appointed board provides that once the change is approved at an annual town meeting, it also has to be approved at the subsequent annual town election. So if that were approved in June in 2022, it would also have to be voted again at the annual town election in 2023. And then after that, the terms of those members who were elected have to expire at their own expiration date subsequent to the 2023 annual town election. So I mean, it's very complicated, and it would take basically 3 years to implement.
Okay.
Under any circumstances.
Yeah, under all circumstances.
So you described the special act path as being less complicated.
It's much less complicated. The special act, and my suggestion, and I think it's also town council's, is that the warrant article presented to, assuming it goes to the June town meeting, presented to that town meeting would include the special act that we would like the legislature to adopt. And
Yes.
it would spell out exactly when and under what circumstances the current elective board's terms would terminate and when the selectmen would be authorized to appoint successors. So it would, although there is uncertainty as to when the legislature would act on it, once they acted, the town would know with certainty when it was all going to be implemented. And because the legislature can do anything it wants, unlike under those statutory mechanisms, the legislature can terminate the current elective terms of all the planning board members on a date certain. and authorize the selectmen to appoint successors.
Okay. Any questions for Alan from John or Ann?
I'd be happy to send you copies of the statutes that apply to the statutory process for, there's one statute that applies to reducing the number, and there's another statute that applies to changing from elected to appointed.
Yeah, so Alan, I just want to get a clarification here. So if we send our plan to the legislature, they will act on it whenever they decide to act on it.
That's
We
right.
don't control that time frame.
Right.
But do they have to act on what we sent to them, or they can say unilaterally, everybody's off, we're enacting this, and you got to appoint 5 people?
Well, I don't have a lot of experience with home rule petitions and special acts, but I assume that if the selectmen petition for this, they will vote up or down on what you send them. And my guess is that our local legislators will get them to adopt what we want. The uncertainty is as to the timing.
Understood. Okay.
Ann?
I think it's better to petition the legislature, and the only question is, can we get the petition that we want prepared between now and the town meeting? And I guess there's a question of whether we want to go forward with this or not at all.
Okay. What's the cutoff for articles from the selectmen for the town meeting?
So the warrant has to be finalized, the latest, I think it's the 24th, might be the 23rd.
So we have 3 weeks to write a clear, livable special act.
I would suggest that my previous comment about a changing board configuration is relevant.
Is relevant?
Still
I'm not
applies.
sure if you said irrelevant or relevant.
Is relevant. I think if you have new board member or members and try to re-engage on this on a very short timeline, you're gonna have some challenges.
Yep. So what Mr. Bowling is suggesting is we have 2 weeks. Actually, 13 days.
Yep.
To,
Or it's something that goes to the fall town meeting.
or it's something that goes to the fall town meeting.
And that timing is better in terms of the legislature, because that you would tee up for early winter and your chances of
At the
getting
start
it
of the
passed.
new legislative session.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Trying to get something done in July is problematic at best.
But
Not
we would at least be at
impossible,
the
but it's-
we would be at the front of the list if we were able to get that done in 13 days.
I think you'd be at the bottom of the list for this session.
Would we have to reapply in the next session?
Where are we in sessions here?
Okay. I think
I
that
think so.
perhaps that's best something that we check out with town council. Because, you know, where we get into the list is very important. How this works with town meeting is even more important. And the fact that it's been sitting for some time is also needed to be taken into consideration. So
So,
and we have to be
Question,
we'd have to be very careful in our language around things like terms, the maximum number of terms. Duration is not a problem. Reappointment is not a problem, but whether there's a maximum set of terms, because our Board of Select Board policies will not override a home rule petition. That's going to be written in concrete for the planning board. John.
Yeah, question. This has been incubating for what, I guess a year and a half or some period of time. Does the planning board have any expectation? And I guess, Greg, have they been in touch with you or Jeff or? I mean, it's on the agenda tonight.
Yes, they've been in touch with me.
Okay, all right. So they have expectations.
They would like to see this happen in June,
Yes.
or at least the members who voted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Eli?
so you're looking for opinions about whether or not the board feels that this is something we should move forward with or not, right?
I think what we need at this point tonight is, and Sandy, I will come back to you, don't go away. I think what we need at this point tonight is whether we think that moving to do a home rule petition article for the June town meeting is the best path to go with this.
And not whether or not we feel like this is an appropriate path to take it all.
We could certainly consider whether it's an appropriate path to take it all. My feeling about that is that yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought that was part of the discussion. I'll tell you what, I'll just state my opinion. Coming down to the last few times, I can really state my opinion, so I'll do it.
You can state your opinion when you're a civilian.
Yeah, I can. In a slightly different position right now, so I'll go forward with it. So my opinion is I actually do support this article. I know it's a controversial article. The reasons, I got a number of different reasons for supporting it, but one, I think, fairly clear objective reason is the bylaw actually specifies the nature of the people making up the planning board, which our current mechanism for establishing a planning board doesn't do. Our current mechanism means they're just elected. And I've seen rounds where people are voting on people they simply don't know. They don't know their professional status, their qualifications for the job. And this is a job where people are implementing in an adjudicatory fashion the laws of the town and impacting people's lives, their livelihood, their financial interests. Some of these things, decisions that the planning board makes have impact on property values. And I think that people should have some expectation that the people who are on that board actually have skills and knowledge of the laws and how to apply them. As a matter of definition, And this achieves that. And our current mechanism does not. And so I think that this is better.
Okay. We're moving into a phase of this where we're trying to get clarity as to whether we support actually changing from elected to appointed. So if your comments or questions are related to that, I'll take your comments or questions. If they're not, I'd like you to hold on. And I will come back to you. I'm going to hear everybody on this. So Sandy, is that the case for your comments and questions?
About whether you should or should not move in this direction. Yes, that has to do with my comments, but I think you probably want to make sure you're hearing from the rest of the board first, correct?
I would like to do that if
Yeah.
and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Alan?
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. I just want to, I think I know what Eli was referring to when he talked about the bylaw that would be that was proposed to implement this change. And I've seen it. I think it calls for different members to be appointed with different expertise and so forth. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that unless you make that part of the petition to the legislature,
yes,
that would not necessarily be the case.
Yes.
Because we can't accomplish this change through a bylaw amendment.
Right. That falls in line with what I just said, that if this goes forward as a special act, it's written pretty much in concrete, and changing it is very challenging.
Right, but
you need another special act to change.
But if you want to include specific types of expertise for appointment to members, that ought to be included in the
language of the special act.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, my comments were in the context of the salient parts of the bylaw that were presented to us tonight. Yes.
Okay. So let me get to John and Anne about whether you want to express yourself in terms of any issues related to going forward with this conversion.
Yeah, I can comment, Jeff.
Go ahead.
I'm in favor of the conversion. I think that, as Eli had said, there's a good deal of knowledge that you have to have dealing in this particular area, either training or perhaps vocational knowledge. I put a couple of other committees in that category, Conservation Committee, I think, Finance Committee, both of which are appointed committees. It's not only the skill set that you've got, and that's not to say that you can't get up to speed after a period of time, but we're often wrestling with issues where you don't have that time. And especially when these appointments are about 3 years, really, it takes 3 years to know what's going on in some of these areas.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not steeped in them already. So I think from a practical perspective, I think that these committees can function in a more efficient manner if the folks that wind up on them already are informed about the issues, or not the specific issues, but about the kind of background and knowledge that you need to be able to be a contributing part of the committee. So it makes sense to me.
Okay. Thank you. Anne?
Yes, this change makes sense to me.
Okay, and it makes sense to me. I don't think, do you want to do a formal vote? Let's do a formal vote because I think that that's important.
Excuse me? This is Sandy.
Yes, Sandy.
I thought you were coming back to me for comment.
I am coming back to you for comment.
After the vote?
No.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I thought you were just calling for a vote then, so I just
Oh,
wanted
I was saying that we should do it.
to. Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Oh, okay. First of all, I wanted to point out that the overwhelming amount of towns in Massachusetts have a planning board that is elected and not appointed. A few of them that are appointed often have to do with the legislation about the size of the town being over 10,000. And many of them are still elected, but it's overwhelming. Based on a study done in 2007, it was like nearly 80 to 90% of towns that were like this, according to a Mass Planners survey that's been quoted, I think it was from 2018, of a huge amount of the towns studied, that it was still between 75 and 80%. The reason being is that because it is impacting the lives of the town, as Eli said, and others have brought up, the townspeople typically want representation, and often that may or may not be seen as what happens when appointed. So I would like to voice that it's a very big change and something that the town should be very aware of, as we have very controversial subjects coming up in planning right now, but also in the not too distant future with some of the regulations that are coming down with 40A and everything else going on. So I would think that you would want to do more research behind all of the implications that this has, and really get a true sense of what the town feels like before you put this to vote.
Okay, thank you. Kathy Bellata.
Kathy Bellata, 21 Pine Street. Just a question. Do any towns and cities in Massachusetts have a hybrid model where there are specific appointed roles for architect or lawyer or whatever, and also allow one or two positions to be elected? So
None that I'm aware of. Greg?
Just
Yeah, I'm not
I
aware
can
of any
send
that are
the-
hybrid.
I can send the information, but on the official report, there were hybrid. So that is something to potentially consider.
Okay. Gary Russell.
Hi, good evening, thanks. Just to chime in on this issue, just for a matter of background, I am a certified professional planner, and many of you know that I've served on the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and co-chaired the Master Plan Committee for several years. I'm in favor of this change, although I will note that it could be fine-tuned. There are examples of hybrid boards where some members are appointed with specific backgrounds. In fact, you can even designate specific nominating bodies, such as the AIA or the APA, American Planning Association, et cetera. So there are ways that you could fine tune this in the future to get to what I think is really important about having relevant experience and background on the board, while also allowing some at-large representation for the community. I'm in favor of this. I've done a lot of this work both for the town as well as a consultant, and I do think it's incredibly important for many of these complex issues to have folks that have the relevant education and experience to make the decisions in a timely fashion. That noted, I'm not opposed to this being pushed off to a later date, because it's also very important that the community has clarity about what they may be voting on. And I don't see how you'll be able to get to a point of a clear article for voting for this session of the town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. I would preface this particular vote with the fact that it has been a vote of the majority of the planning board to support this. More than a majority. So our vote right now is whether we support moving planning board from an elected to an appointed board. So can I get such a motion and a second?
Make a motion that the select board support moving the support the request from the planning board to move from an elected board to an appointed board.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. There are two other decisions that need to be made tonight. One is, do we want to put this together for the June town meeting? And the second is whether we want to move forward with a special act or move forward through the statutes that Alan cited, with the caveat that he may not have got them exactly right. But the statutory route, let's just call it that. So that's the two other questions that need to be dealt with tonight. June meeting and special act or statutory route. Eli.
Well, what I would do is take the second one first. So I think it's pretty clear that the special act is the only course. The other routes sound heinous, fraught, peril, unclear for everybody, a disaster of epic proportions in the making. So I would make a motion that we support moving forward with this through a special act of the legislature as opposed to other means.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of that motion? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Final issue is whether we do this now or whether we wait until fall town meeting. And I don't know whether we need a vote on that or not, but just a consensus. My own sense is they've waited a long time and they can wait a little longer, so that we do this right and that we do it with clear language in the special act that people in the town become familiar with. We're not going to have the town write the special act, but we will have public forum to discuss why it's going in this direction.
I move that we defer action on this article until the fall town meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll do it as a motion. Any discussion of this motion? Roll call vote. Mr. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. That gives us a little breathing room. Okay. Alan, we really appreciate the effort that you brought to this and the information that you brought to us. I think we've moved forward to do this in the fall and to have some time to really write the best special act that we can and introduce it into the legislature after our fall town meeting. They basically set up their dockets for the following January in the fall. So
I don't have any say in this, but I think the decision you made on this is very sound.
I appreciate that. That means a lot. Okay.
Jeff, if you don't need me any further, I think I will sign off.
Fine. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan.
Always a pleasure.
Okay.
Have a good evening. I hope you don't have to stay up too late.
Yeah, so do we. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is select board policies, and we've had some people who have been waiting for some time for us to review the policies that we have on our agenda tonight. And I want to thank the board for the careful deliberation that we just did on the whole issue of that special act. And the first one that's up for review is 89-2. Boy, before we do that, do you want to do the second readings?
I think we're okay on second readings. I knew that there were two that had not been completed, but one of them is something that we are the equal employment, which we agreed should be a personnel policy, and the other is the fair housing, where we're at the last I knew we were waiting for an opinion from town council to see whether that was a policy that had any relevance to the Board of Selectmen, or was it something that was required of the Board of Selectmen? And I haven't heard.
Yeah, I'll have to follow up with town council. Probably got lost in the shuffle of town meeting.
Imagine that. Okay. Then we will take that up on the 16th. And if we are moving to take there's one that was personnel policy.
Personnel and fair housing. Equal employment should be a personnel policy.
So that's already in the personnel policy. So
okay, so I will just.
So you're covered. You don't have to.
I will.
You can delete that.
Okay.
Okay, I will mark that as deleted.
Well, did we decide as a board that we wanted that to happen?
Oops, sorry. I think we decided as a board that we wanted it in the personnel policies.
Okay, and we don't
That's
have
my recollection.
We don't have to reaffirm that with a so-called second reading of that decision. We made our decision. Moving on.
Right. The next policy, and I can put it up if I can share my screen, or we can just discuss it. And it is here. This is the policy for raising and lowering municipal flags.
Okay, you can screen share.
Okay. Oops. Grumble, grumble, grumble. There. Okay. All I have to do is figure out where I do share screen. Here. Okay. Host has disabled participant screen sharing.
No, I'm sorry. Screen share is now open. I'm sorry. It was checked and I unchecked it. So it's good. Go ahead.
More or less.
Here we go.
Okay. This is fairly long. The existing policy is fairly long, quite long, and includes details of every person for whom the flag should be flown at half-staff. Our present practice doesn't follow many parts of the policy. Specifically, one of the things that the policy says is that the flag shall be lighted if it is flown at night. And the flag at the fire station is flown at night and not lighted. And the flag at Tux Point, which I believe is a town flag, is neither illuminated nor taken down. Many of the regulations, and here I'm going to the flag show that there's the raising and lowering procedure, but there's a large section on when the flag should be flown at half-staff. And as I said in my notes, I said I'd be inclined to limit the list to item 3, which is the flag should be displayed at half-staff by the edict of the president, governor, or board of selectmen. I don't think we need to know exactly how long it should be flown for an associate justice of the Supreme Court, since I think that would be set by the president, for example. And the flag at the fire station is more often at half-staff than the flag on the town common. And the flag at Tux Point is never flown at half-staff. At least I've never seen it flown at half-staff. So I wanted to have some discussion with the board and anyone else who's interested on what changes should be done to this policy. I've given you my opinions, at least some of them, and I would welcome comments from others.
Okay, can you scroll to the first page?
Oh, yeah.
Please.
For anyone who may be seeing this for the first time, the language on the left is the existing language, and the bold on the right are my comments.
I think the first issue here is clarifying what flags are town flags.
Bruce Icy, 49 Pleasant Street. Can I speak in?
Hold on 1 second, Bruce.
Okay.
Greg? The fire station flag is clearly a town flag. Is the Tux Point flag a town flag as well?
It is. I mean, that's our property and it's our flagpole.
Okay. And the third flag that we refer to in town as a town flag is the flag that is now incorporated into the honorary, not a memorial. Bruce, correct me on what the
Honor roll.
The honor roll. Thank you.
Veterans honor roll.
The Veterans Honor Roll. And the question that I have is that a town flag, or is that a flag that is under the jurisdiction of the Legion, which is responsible for the honor roll. And this question is being addressed to Greg.
That was my understanding that remains a town flagpole. It was installed obviously on the efforts of the Legion and under the leadership of Bruce and a couple of others. But I making the assumption that it is a town flagpole.
Okay. And let me just ask for a point of information from Bruce Heisey. Is that your understanding as well?
What, is it a part of a town flagpole? It's on the town common. It's symbolizing for the Veterans Honor Roll. With that said, it is on the town common. It's the CPA donated money towards the flagpole or the honor roll. So, yes, it is a town flagpole, but with a sole purpose, I believe, and myself speaking for a lot of veterans, that it would be.
Bruce, I don't want to cut you off, but you're jumping ahead of me a little bit here.
No problem.
Please hold on for just a minute. Okay?
No, please shut me off.
Well, no, I'm not going to shut you off. Please just hold on, because I don't want you to jump ahead of where we are. So the question that I raised is, can we establish where the town flags are? And there are three. The flag that's on the town common associated with the honor roll is excuse me, replaced what was the flagpole that everyone referred to as the town common flag, the town flag. So all three flags are town flags. Now we come back to Ann's question about how policies are followed and where they're followed. And in particular, what the policies are related to town flags and town flag poles. Okay.
I'm sorry, can I ask my question?
Who is speaking?
This is Hope Wabuchi. I've had my hand up. I just wanted to ask before we move on to the policy itself.
This is a discussion of the policy, Hope. Is it related to the policy?
It's just a clarifying question about the flagpole.
About the flagpole. We just talked about three flagpoles.
About the flagpole on the town common.
Okay. And your question is?
First of all, I'll just introduce myself. I think that we're required to do that. Hope Wabuchi, 2 Putnam Court, here in Manchester. I'm the past commander of the American Legion. So I would like to ask, so did the flagpole that's on the town common, just to clarify, that replace specifically pretty much the location of the old town flagpole? Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. To people in the public, when you put your hand up, I see your hand and I recognize that hands are up. I try and take them in a particular order related to the discussion. But thank you for introducing that question, Hope. Okay, so Ann's opened this with present practice does not follow this policy. She related that to, in significant degree, to flying flags at half-mast, but also the issue of taking flags down at sunset.
Or illuminating them.
And these are all flag uses that are described in a congressional act that's cited in the current philosophy of the policy. So illuminating the flags is part of that policy that if they are illuminated, flags need to be taken down at sunset unless they are illuminated. Flags should be taken down in inclement weather. And that's a less rigorously applied standard of that law. So question number one, in terms of revising the policy, is are we going to incorporate by reference congressional law 36 USC 17178, public law 344. Are we going to incorporate that by reference? And because in the past, we've taken out these, in our past reviews of policies, we have taken out the philosophy section and dropped it. So I guess that's the first question for the board on this, from my point of view. And you can take this wherever you want at this point.
The question, I'm wandering off into the direction of all weather. This was written when flags were caught, and it's the inclement weathers may as well be dropped. We certainly don't do it. And yes, my goal in going over the policies is to try to make them short and clear.
Yep.
So that we know what we're familiar with them and we follow them. So I prefer that if we reference federal or state law, we just put in a reference to the law and not restate it.
Correct. I would agree with that. I'm interested in Eli's and John's comments on that.
Yeah, Jeff?
John.
Yeah, so right now, so we're not following any of these rules right now.
Yes, we are.
The flag goes up. Is it coming down in the evening at any of these places?
It does not come down, and I'm now going to refer to it as the honor roll flag, but it's by reference, it's a town flag. It does not come down there because that flagpole is illuminated.
Correct. Okay. And in the other places where it's not illuminated, I don't know that there's any kind of a practice in place for people to put these flags up or take them down. I don't know who, if anyone, handles Tux Point. The fire station will obviously be firefighters, but I don't know if that's done. Do we know that, Ann, or did you ask that question? Or
I know for a fact that it's a town flag.
Yes, that's been established.
Yes.
And
I think it is not taken down at night.
No, I don't think
I
so
didn't.
either.
I got overwhelmed and did not actually ask whether the fire chief.
That's okay. I think that by observation, we could say that it's not taken, it's not lowered and removed from the flagpole on a daily basis. One question that comes with that is, do we make all three poles equal by illuminating all three poles?
The fire department is illuminated. They have a light on the side of the building that shines up on the flag.
Okay, Bruce, before you jump in, could you raise your hand?
Oh, I'm sorry. I got my screen still up here.
Yeah, if you're on your Zoom screen, down in the bottom right-hand side.
Yeah.
It says raise hand.
Okay.
And that works best.
Okay.
So in reference to your comment just now about there's a light on it. The front of the fire station is lit up at night. Whether that lighting is provided specifically for that flag or not, I don't think that
It is.
Greg, could you comment on that?
I know that there's a light there. Is it sufficient? I'm not an expert on flag protocol, but we could certainly make it better if it needs to be better. I don't think that'd be that hard to do.
So the lighting on the honor roll flag is the lighting that I've seen most often, which is lighting that comes up the pole at the flag.
Right.
And in illuminated flag situations. But one question for the board is whether we wish to keep in line with flag protocol and Public Law 344. The flag either needs to be removed at night or it needs to be illuminated. And as a board, we would be able to make the suggestion about which of those two directions we want to go in. So I would be interested in any feedback from the board on that.
Jeff?
Yes.
So I can't claim to be steeped in expertise on protocol. But my thinking is that if we're really the flagpole that we're really talking about as and is the Tux Point flagpole, whether or not we light it or change the policy to raise and lower it. I think there's negatives to both of those. Raising and lowering it every day requires somebody to go and do that. And lighting it, if we already have multiple town flags that are illuminated at night, and we go and we purposefully set up lighting directed upwards, there's a little part of me that says that's not the best thing either. We spend a lot of time trying to reduce the degree to which we throw light into the sky out of our municipalities as a function of municipal operations. So I think both of those have negatives to them.
John?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm with regard to Tux Point, I'm not in favor of necessarily lighting that. I'm just wondering if that flag doesn't necessarily have to be up 365, 365 days a year or whatever. And there are many more people that are out there during the summer. And I'm wondering if we have a staff member that's out there when? In the weekends? When does Parks and Rec have somebody out there? And that could be a responsibility to put that flag up and take it down by that person, because frankly, they don't have a lot to do.
So right, that's weekend coverage.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was, just weekend. But I'd be in favor of exploring something like that for the students or whoever it is that we have out there on weekends during the summer, which is when, frankly, most people are out there.
Okay. Ann? Please unmute.
Yep. Okay, I was going to say that it's not just a question of treating all three flags. Though the regulation on the display and the illumination is part of the public law. So this is less of a town option than, unless we decide that as a town we don't.
No, no, we're not going to go there. No, the flag needs to be honored. I think that John's solution to Tux Point is a good one. And I think that in the policy, we could say that the flags at the fire station and or Tux Point. I'm not sure about the illumination on flag at the fire station, but the flag at Tux Point should be raised and lowered. I mean, typically that happens at sunrise and sunset. I worked in a public school and it was done at the beginning of the school day and at the end of the school day. I think what's most important is that when the area is being functionally used, that a flag could be raised and then lowered at the end of the functional use period. It doesn't have to be sunrise and sunset. So I would take that language out.
Okay, which language would you take out?
I would take out the language of sunrise. It's very specific.
Okay, okay, fine. Yes, right. Okay, got it.
And it's very specific to the town hall and the fire station and doesn't mention Tux Point.
Well, yeah, the Tux Point was not on the list.
So, you know, you can put Tux Point in there as the flag at Tux Point would be raised for ceremonial occasions and during the summer when Tux Point is staffed.
Just out of curiosity, where would we store the flag?
Where will we store the flag?
Yeah, so that the kid who's there can find it and raise it.
Right, there's a storage closet in the restroom there.
That raises two questions, Ann. One is where we store it, and the second question is how we store it. Because flags, when they're taken down, should be properly folded and not just thrown in a heap on a table. Again, they need to be treated with respect. So whatever we want to do about Tux Point as a policy, I would want to make sure that the flag is treated respectfully. But I think we need to look at the fire station and whether the lighting at the fire station constitutes illumination or not. And if so, then we're good there. And then we just are dealing with Tux Point. Now, in the material that's in parentheses, Ann, did you insert that about the non-absorbent material, the nylon, et cetera?
Nope. That's
in the original policy?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. All right. In terms of the displaying the flag at half-staff, I would keep the first sentence my recommendation would be to keep the first sentence.
Mhm.
And the second sentence, the two about
Yep.
raising it and
Mhm.
lowering it and then raising it again before lowering it finally. And eliminate the following days. And because that's all part of the law. And keep number 3.
Okay. I guess I don't understand. If the flag is being displayed at half-staff, it's illuminated, it's probably not going to be lowered for the day.
Correct, but if the flag is being moved from full staff to half staff, it should be completely lowered and then raised halfway.
It should be completely raised and then lowered halfway.
No, if it's at the top of the pole because it's illuminated, when it goes to half staff, it should go completely to the bottom of the pole and then be raised halfway.
Okay.
In other words, we're not just dropping it down to halfway and then raising it back up again. I know that sounds like a lot of rigmarole, but that's as close to, I've looked at flag etiquette a lot in the past and for display at my own house. And I think it's important. But it's also getting late and I don't want to drag this out. So those would be my recommendations, and the board can make a decision about how they want to move with the issues of display, whether we keep number 1, whether we drop number 2, whether we keep number 3. And I would take the last section for responsibility for raising and lowering. And I would say that the responsibility for raising and lowering the flag is something that the town administrator delegates to someone who is knowledgeable of these protocols. I don't think it has to be the police chief or the fire chief.
Right. I have a question on number 3 there.
Yes.
Which I put in my notes. If we're taking our clue from the president or the governor, the Board of Selectmen would be lowering the flag to requesting that the flag be lowered to half staff for notable when notable members of the residents of the town die. And if we have to wait a week and a half for the selectmen to meet and discuss that, we're kind of going to miss the moment. So I would suggest making that the town administrator with consultation with the chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
Or the chair of the select board.
I would support that.
I would agree, Ian. That's good.
Yep.
Okay. I think we have enough to go to a second reading. I want to recognize, I'm sorry, no, Eli says.
Yeah, so I want to bring up an issue that probably complicate this some, but in past, we have discussed flags other than the American flag on flagpoles, and we've developed informal policy around them. We have not incorporated that here, and I think that I'm not suggesting that we have the language to do that here, and nor necessarily have the time tonight to produce that language here. But I do think that it should be here. So as far as a second reading is concerned, I actually think that perhaps we should come up with that language or debate it and inject that as part of the first reading.
Okay. Ann?
I heard on the radio today that the Supreme Court had voted against the city of Boston in their use of the flagpole. The city of Boston had a pole that they used for celebrating other events. And a particularly Christian group wanted to fly a flag with a cross, and the city of Boston said no. And the Supreme Court has said, if you fly it for anybody, you have to fly it for everybody. Now that's a gross exaggeration of what they actually said, but it's close. So I think we should think about what our policy should be on honoring other organizations by raising their flag on our poles. Because it's nice to honor the people we like, but I'm not sure that we want to open this to the Ku Klux Klan.
So that would suggest that, so there's a couple different options there. One is to acknowledge that and within this policy, make it clear that there's an alternative, a well-defined alternative for those groups, as opposed to simply omitting. I can see the argument.
And your hand is still up.
I'm sorry.
Is that because you wanted to comment again?
No, that's because I get confused.
No, don't worry about it. I generally try and lower people's hands when they're talking. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Jeff. So I've thought about this, and I did hear the announcement that Ann heard this afternoon. And Boston, I guess that was City Hall. They have 3 flagpoles. And there's one that they use for those, for various groups. And that got me to thinking, the flagpole that we have now that sits in our honor roll or our honor roll area, it was moved. I don't know if, I wouldn't use the word commandeered, but it kind of moved into, and now it's really kind of part of that whole memorial. I would be in favor of having another flagpole that probably sits kind of in front of Greg's office or in that garden area on the other side of the town hall that could be used for any of a number of purposes. I just feel that the flagpole that's in the middle of the memorial, even though it's on town property, it has a different kind of significance because it's kind of been co-opted into the whole veterans and memorial meaning rather than being a flagpole on town property that has a general meaning.
Okay, I need to just comment on the language you're using.
Yeah.
It was very, very clear at the dedication of the honor roll, or the roll of honor, I mean, that this was not a memorial. There are people whose stones are there and whose names are there who are alive. It's not a memorial.
Yeah.
I don't think that anything was co-opted. I think that it was put in as part of the design, and the design was agreed to by the Board of Selectmen at the time. So it's not a co-op. Your idea is a good idea, at least from my point of view, of having a second pole that is much more clearly defined as the town pole, and doesn't cross the border between those, the two functions of that flag, which is to honor the veterans who are part of the honor roll. Eli.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe there you can make an argument that co-opt is not the right word. However, before we had a flagpole that was the town common flagpole, and that is gone now. And now we have a flagpole that is part of the Veterans Honor Roll, and a number of people feel that the flagpole in there is for the Veterans Honor Roll. And so maybe co-opt is not the right word, maybe subsumed or some other variation, but there is certainly a feeling among a number of people that that flagpole is now a special purpose flagpole, not really exactly town common flagpole. And if that's the case, and if we as a board come to recognize that, then I would take a very strong and vocal position supporting what John just said, that there should be another flagpole to represent some of these other things. I would also make a comment that there are cases, I think, where the veterans flagpole should, if in fact we are now deeming it the veterans flagpole, that there are a number of veterans who can make an argument that there should be other flags flying on that to honor them as well, because they are both veterans and people with some other particular interest and or defining aspect that they wish to have recognized as part of their service to the country. So I'll leave it at that. And I think if we're going to go down that route of restricting the one flagpole, then I think that we have to have another one.
There's a third option, which is to say that as we started at the beginning of this meeting, and it's the reason I brought the question up, that town funds were used to build the honor roll, along with funds that were donated by people who were veterans or in support of veterans. And that is a town flag, and that no town flag will carry any other flag besides the American flag. That's a third option. Okay, so I have two hands up, and I will recognize Hope Watbuchi.
Thank you. Could the board just clarify for me when you indicated that the Board of Selectmen voted to approve that flag pole and the honor roll? What was the discussion by the Board of Selectmen as to the flagpole use? when you voted on that?
It was a design approval, Hope. It was not, the use of the flagpole was not specified.
So the use was remain the same? There was no vote to change the use of the flagpole? It was to remain the same as it had been?
It was, as I said, a design vote to do that and to remove, in the general design of the whole town common, to remove the existing so-called town flagpole.
I understand. So there was no vote to make that specifically a veterans flagpole?
Nor was there a specific vote to make it a town flagpole.
Right. But but you recognize it as the town flagpole? I'm just trying to clarify.
That's what I was trying to clarify earlier when I brought up what are the town flagpoles.
Right. So it is a town flagpole according to the town administrator. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Heisey, you had your hand up a moment ago.
Yeah, two things in regards to what we're talking about now, the current flagpole that was put in for the Veterans Honor Roll. The existing flagpole that was there was a 55-foot pole and would have towered over the current flagpole that we put in that was adjusted to the height of the town hall. My assumption and the board's assumption on not the e-board, but the board of people that were on for the honor roll, that other flagpole would have been taken and put someplace else as a town flagpole. It wasn't like, because it just didn't fit the honor roll, struck the height wise. It was way too high for the current existing honor roll. But I, under the assumption that flagpole would have been moved to someplace else. Now, whether it been on the town common, Tux Point, and numerous other places, but that was the assumption, that it would have been moved to someplace else. So that's all I have to say on that. So it's not the existing pole that was there before. That pole was moved to the DPW. That should have been later on put up someplace else. But I do like the idea. I do like the idea of another common flagpole on the town common.
Well, it raises questions, Bruce, about
Yes.
the funding of the Veterans Honor Roll and the funding of the town common project itself. And public funds were used for both.
Yes.
And at no point was there a specific discussion of relinquishing the town flagpole. In terms of the redesign. What was approved was the design. What was not anticipated was who gets to say what happens on that pole. That was not anticipated. And that's the problem we're dealing with tonight, and we've dealt with previously, or tried to deal with previously. There are protocol issues that come up in terms of having a second flag on the town common, a second American flag on the town common, having a second flag in front of the town hall and where it should be, that aren't just, oh, we got a place over here, we can put it here. Some of those protocol issues come into this conversation as well. I want to recognize the fact that it's 20 minutes to 10. And I don't think the board is ready to move this policy as it pertains to the town flags forward to a second reading tonight. I think we've had a lot of suggestions as to how the policy might be modified, but we haven't resolved the central issue, which is how to respectfully recognize the Veterans Honor Roll and respectfully recognize the town flag. And in all of this, to respectfully recognize the American flag. And
If I may suggest, I will avoid that question and make the edits, the changes that have been discussed without addressing the question of whose poll is which, and come back with something shorter that for the next meeting.
Okay.
And we can resume the question of whether there is currently a town common poll. I think we could just put this aside for now.
And I think
that would make me happy.
okay. And I would support that position. I think that the moving it to the 16th also allows us to do some research on what solutions might be brought to bear to address this, and to further understand from town council's point of view what I'm not sure whether it was the Supreme Court ruling today or what it was, but that's news to me. I did not see any news stories on it. So I would move that Ann does the edits and that we do another first reading on the 16th and try and finalize and incorporate into that first reading the town common flagpole issue. Is there agreement on the board? Ann? You have to unmute yourself, Ann.
I was going to suggest that we skip the next policy because it's late. But you're right, we have to decide what we're doing now. And I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So Eli and John, are you in agreement with that? Ann proposed that she does edits.
Yep.
Yep. Get halfway there, 2/3 of the way there.
Yep. Well, maybe a quarter of the way there.
Okay.
All right. So, and what I would suggest is to both Hope and to Bruce, is if you could write down some of your thoughts about thoughts and concerns about how you want to resolve this. That would inform our discussion next time, as well as what we bring to the table next time. Okay. Hope?
I'm sorry, are you deferring the agenda item for the flag raising?
Am I deferring the agenda item for the flag raising?
I'm on the agenda for the flag raising.
That's in the consent agenda.
I don't know.
Yes. No, we're going to take up the consent agenda next.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So board's in agreement that we're going to do what we just said about the policy of related to flag raising. We now have the consent agenda. On the consent agenda is Reed's Ride and an LGBTQ flag raising ceremony on June 1st. The town hall bench honoring Manchester by the Sea Police, Fire, DPW, town employees, and volunteers that would be placed on town common. Approval of the minutes from 4/4 and approval of the minutes from 4/4. So I've asked for the minutes from 4/4 to be pulled out. There were so many edits that I had to do, and Greg tried to deal with those edits in his copy of it that went into the packet. And I haven't finished reviewing all those edits. So I'm asking that it be pulled out and deferred until the 16th. I'm also asking that we pull out the flag raising ceremony from the consent agenda so that we can vote on the other two items.
I'd like to remove the bench.
You'd like to remove the bench.
No, I don't want to remove the bench. I want to remove the bench article from the consent agenda.
I got it. So the one item left in the consent agenda is Reed's Ride. Can I get a motion to accept Reed's Ride letter?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that letter describes how Reed's Ride will come through Manchester. All right. Sarah Mellish, do you have a comment that you need to make?
It's my understanding that you had a second item on the agenda with respect to term limits. And I have significant concerns regarding that.
That will be taken up on the 16th.
Okay, yeah, because
we're not dropping it. We're not dropping it, Sarah. We're taking these slowly, one at a time, and sometimes really grinding through them.
You need to look at your history, because there's many members of the Finance Committee and the ZBA who have extended those term limits beyond, and we need the expertise.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, so in order, we'll take the flag raising ceremony first. Hope you had some comments you wanted to make.
Well, my request to the Board of Selectmen, thank you all. Hope Wabuchi, 2 Putnam Court. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm also the founder and president of North Shore Pride, which is a nonprofit organization with a mission of education and advocacy as on behalf of LGBTQ plus persons here on the North Shore. And the organization was started as a result of hate crimes against our community here on the North Shore in various towns throughout the North Shore. And we're 12 years old. And so we coordinate the flag raisings for many of the towns on the North Shore. And by flag raising, I mean what's typically known as the rainbow flag, and now having been converted to the progress flag, which is an inclusive flag of all members of our community. And so I'm here this evening asking the Board of Selectmen, and thank you so much. And I know it was serendipitous to have the policy of the flag being flown in Manchester on your agenda tonight, and I appreciate that conversation. I'm also the past commander, as I mentioned, of the American Legion Post 113 here in Manchester by the Sea. And so I'm here this evening to ask that we fly the progress flag on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community throughout the month of June, starting on June 1st, which is the month of June is known as Pride Month in our community, through not only throughout the United States, but throughout the world. And North Shore Pride is also a member of Interpride, which is the international groups of pride throughout the world. Following in the steps of Marblehead, Peabody, Danvers, Beverly, Salem, all flying the flag, the LGBTQ plus flag on their town or city common, with the exception of Salem, which flies it not only outside their city hall, but also on Riley Plaza, flying a total of, I think it's 8 flags at once. So we ask this evening that North Shore Pride fly, as a town resident, that we fly the progress flag on the town common, on the town flagpole as it currently exists, on June 1st for the month of June. That is the request, and we appreciate your discussion and consideration.
Thank you. Okay. Last year, this request came in and the decision was made not to fly on the flagpole that we've been discussing tonight. And we put a banner up in front of Town Hall with the pride flag at that time. And it remained there throughout the month of June.
That's incorrect. If I could clarify, that would be fabulous. We were told that the flagpole was owned by the American Legion, and that's why we couldn't fly it on the flagpole that's since been clarified to be the town flagpole. Also, we were not permitted to fly it for the month of June. We flew it. We were only permitted to fly it for 2 weeks in June. I just wanted to make that clarification. Thanks.
Okay.
And again, it is not to be antagonistic at all. You know, we celebrate, you know, our pride in our community for the month of June, and it's a happy time. And it feels a little contentious to me, and I don't want it to be. That's not our intention at all, at all. But it seems to have become a bit contentious, and that's unfortunate. It really is. Especially what's going on. You know, we just had.
I think, Cope, the issue is not the flag of the Pride community, of North Shore Pride, or the LGBTQ plus community. That's the issue here. The issue really is an issue of the broader issue that was raised in Boston and addressed in I don't know what way by the Supreme Court in a pronouncement today, and that is what place does the banners of various parts of the community have in public display at Town Hall or on the Town Common? And it's not, to my mind, a matter of any specific community, but this issue came up in December when we were approached to display a particular religious symbol on the Town Common. And we said no. And there's a lot of confusion around which communities, when, for how long. So I don't think it's, you know, a slight to the community that you represent when we're talking about where this goes and how it goes. It's more of an issue of how do we deal with all the communities and all the representations that they would like to have in terms of town hall. So it's a much broader.
Oh, I understand
Question.
totally. And other cities and towns have been dealing with this for years and years and years and seem to have no issue with it. So
But we're not other cities and towns. We're one town.
no, I agree. I understand that. I'm just saying similar towns, similar populations, similar, you know, they do it every year. They have no issue. They're, you know, it's a wonderful celebration. So it's unfortunate. I know that the Board of Selectmen have indicated that not all members have been briefed or understand what the Supreme Court or you know, what the dictation was that came today. So I appreciate that and understand that as well.
So I'm not kicking the can down the road. I understand that there is a time frame that this decision needs to be made. But I would like to defer this decision for our next meeting until we can talk to town council and get an understanding of what the Supreme Court's orders mean to this town. We've already slated for the next meeting to make decision about how we deal with flags and what's a town flagpole on the town common. This is not kicking things down the road. It's just legally, I don't think I can say or lead the board in a discussion one way or the other to make a decision tonight. Now, if there's a board member that wants to object to that, I'd be happy to hear from them. But I would like to not make this decision tonight, but make it on the 16th, and a decision will be made on the 16th. Or I would recommend that a decision is made on the 16th. I don't speak for the whole board. Is there any objection among the board for following that path?
I would ask for a point of information about the request from Hope. Hope, last year, the flag that you proposed was full size, matching the size of the American flag. Is that the same flag that you're proposing this year? Do you have any alternate ones that are smaller than the American flag? And I ask this because if there are different options proposed and they come in late, will you have what you need if, for example, some solution with a size one step below the American flag is proposed?
Yeah, thank you, Eli. So the flag that was flown the last time was proportional to the location that you gave us. So in order to put up, you know, a standard flagpole flag, that would have got lost in that space. So we brought in the really big flag. Progress flags have to be ordered ahead of time because they're fairly new to our community and not everyone makes a nylon progress flag. And so we have some currently on special order. And so we would need to know sooner than later if it's going to go on a standard flagpole or on the size of the flagpole that used to be on town hall. It would be proportional to the flagpole.
So that's what you are ordering or you're about to order?
We have ordered currently a very large flag to fly on the Salem Common during North Shore Pride Parade and Festival on June 25th. That would not necessarily be the flag that we would fly on the town flagpole, which is currently located at the Veterans Memorial. So we would have to order that. So we would need to know sooner than later what flagpole we're being permitted, if we are permitted to fly a flag on the town flagpole.
Okay.
At Town Hall. Okay. Thank you, Eli, for the question.
Okay.
So the next meeting is May.
I understand the urgency.
So that would only give us 2 weeks.
Yeah.
To get something in. Yeah.
Okay. Other board members? All right. Thank you, Hope.
You're welcome.
And you asked to have the bench honoring Manchester by the Sea Police, Fire, DPW, Town Employees, and Volunteers. Pulled out.
Yeah, I'd like to see the Harbor Department listed.
Any comments from the board?
Yeah.
It's appropriate.
I think it's appropriate. Also raises the question of longevity if we ever reorganize and put other departments in.
I guess I wonder about specifying any departments.
Yeah.
As opposed to town employees and volunteers.
Yep.
Because if you say the Harbor Department, then, you know, I see you the Harbor Department, I raise you the accounting department. You know, I mean, it becomes a little bit of, and then which one goes first?
Yeah, and it's also, you've got 3 that are public safety and the DPW. I guess that's not categorized as public safety, but.
You got 2 that are public safety and the DPW.
The harbor is public safety too, but.
You're right, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So why is that singled out?
Yeah, my own reaction to this is it should be town employees and volunteers. But if you want to make a motion in that we include the Harbor Department or move towards that second configuration, I'd accept that.
I move that we authorize a badge on a bench honoring Manchester's town employees and volunteers.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call vote. Ann?
Yes.
Eli?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Town administrators report.
A few updates for you this evening. In our last meeting, we had a short discussion on Chabaco Road. Eli has volunteered to do some reconnaissance on that and talk to folks in Hamilton, making good progress there. And I think we'll have a few more details to present again at your next meeting on the 16th. So stay tuned on that. Construction projects.
Just one comment, Greg, as noted, there's a planning board, excuse me, a Concom meeting, correct? On the 12th. Is that right, Eli?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be on the 11th, but at least that's what I was told verbally, but I don't know if it's been posted yet for the 12th or 11th.
Yeah, we could,
Yes.
we can
11th is
confirm that
correct.
and get the word out.
11th is correct. So we'll get the actual posting out to everybody. Ann,
Having been somewhat in the dark about this, the last I heard, Hamilton was willing to consider the land swap again if we got it in the June meeting, and we're running out of time.
yes,
That's what we're working towards finalizing, yes.
Okay. Thank you. And we don't have to do anything tonight to help that.
so,
Right.
so far they've agreed to going down that path if it doesn't require renewing the permitting.
Mhm.
That they've completed their permitting process to pave the existing road.
Okay.
That's correct, Eli, yes?
Yeah, they said that this is the one point where they're going to get back to us. They were going to clarify whether or not the state was going to require them to redo any of the permitting. But they don't want our vote contingent on any permitting in our vote. So if the state requires them to do something, fine, but they don't want us to place any restrictions on them. Or rather, they're not, their interest level would probably be reduced if we attempted to restrict them.
Okay.
Also, they wanted one small clarification of the language. And it may be miscommunication, I'm not sure, but it seems fairly straightforward. When we discussed this, we were discussing, as we've said here multiple times, a swap of right-of-ways. Because of the way the language was written, they are either perceiving it or correctly assessing it to be an easement that they were receiving as opposed to a replacement right-of-way. And they want it to be a replacement right-of-way without any ambiguity with regard to that.
Okay. I looked at the language. I thought the language was pretty clear.
I thought it was too, and so I don't think it's a big sticking point. I think it's if it's anything, it's a small language change or a simple communications between our lawyers and their lawyers.
Okay. I'm sorry to get off into that, Greg, but I think that we needed to get those clarifications. What we need to do is we need to have an article ready at our next meeting. I would like to work on that with Eli and Greg so that we have an article ready for the review of the whole board and approval of the whole board at our next meeting.
Yeah, it should be essentially the same article. I didn't get any other complaints from Hamilton when I talked to them about that.
Okay. The main hangup in a fall town meeting was that they hadn't completed permitting. That could be the same hangup in this if the state requires permitting.
Well, basically where they're at is if they can pave it where it is, they will do that. And if this other alternative that we proposed last year is made available to them and it's feasible for them to use it, they're willing to do it. But if they've got a bird in the hand, they're going to have that bird.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, Greg, go ahead with the town administrator's report.
Yep, no, that's fine. That's part of why we do this. Construction updates, DPW is getting ready for some paving work, following up on roads that had some utility, sewer, water pipes work done. So they'll be paving Forest Street and Harold Street and the end of Magnolia Avenue. And so those will probably be getting underway in the next couple of weeks. So people will have a little inconvenience, but we'll have a newly paved road after the work is done. One of the bigger construction projects will be the relining of the water main on School Street. And so that will cause some disruptions. There'll be some detours, certainly one lane of traffic only, if not a complete detour. But as the time gets a little closer, into June, July timeframe, we'll be getting more information out on the timing of that and where they will be when. So that'll be coming up. And the work at Tex Point on the new floats there, pretty much have wrapped up the piling work, putting in the new piles. And so that work is progressing well. And they'll be securing the new floats to those pilings in the next couple of weeks. So that should be ready for Memorial Weekend, which will be nice. They were able to identify some new brackets that would help shore up the rotunda itself. So we have a little bit more life in the rotunda, and they'll be doing that work while they wrap up the work on the floats. So that'll be good and allow us to keep using the rotunda. And then lastly, just wanted to announce some webinars coming up and workshops. The first of two regional meetings were held last week, April 27th, for the EPA Building Blocks program, which is looking at ways to help us here on Cape Ann be more resilient to climate change, the bigger storms, rising sea levels, et cetera. Taking a look at where vulnerabilities are. And at this 27th meeting, there was a quick snapshot, a quick overview of this simulated hurricane hitting the area. Category 3 hurricane, and more details on that effort, that modeling. There'll be a separate workshop scheduled for May 18th, and we'll get some details up on the website, and I can send them to you. That'll be a deeper dive into the simulation of a hurricane hitting us pretty much dead on, and what we can expect for the damages. To say the least, it's quite sobering. The damage is extensive, and it really puts a very large exclamation point of the need to be better prepared just from an emergency response standpoint, and how we as a region need to have some plans in place in order to cope with such a major storm hitting us. So that's on the 18th of May. And then the second EPA workshop focusing on some priority projects that might be helpful to the region to lessen those impacts. And that's coming up on May 23rd. So again, more details will follow, and we'll get that information out to you. Okay. Yep, that'll do it for now.
Okay, I have one item that was not anticipated by the chair when we put this agenda together, and that is an email from Sue Brown regarding beginning the effort to identify volunteers who will assist with parking counts as part of the downtown parking study. Volunteers will be asked to attend an hour-long training session in town with an MAPC consultant someday this month, and then assist with counting parked cars within a prescribed route in the downtown during a weekday in late spring or early summer, since we're getting into late spring already, and during a warm, sunny weekend day in July. So it'd be literally counting cars over that area that the parking study is addressing, which is the one that you saw on the map earlier tonight. They're not asking for Board of Selectmen to select board members to volunteer. But if we can identify others that they may reach out to who might be interested in doing this. She mentioned students are welcome. This would be a great project for, if we can get it out on the wire, for high school juniors who are looking for their hours towards graduation for volunteer work. So, Ian, you've got your hand up.
Yes, this was not anticipated, and it is a logistic question. I have been hearing from people who think it would be inconvenient to have a town meeting on a Saturday in June, and wonder whether we might consider moving the meeting, if it can be done, to the 13th. And I've spoken with Alan about it briefly. He thinks there's a risk that if we had it at an evening meeting, it would be 2 days. And the question is, do we want to do anything? Raising it so that we can think about it in 2 weeks.
Okay. We went through this discussion in great detail at the time that we set the town meeting. And for reasons that Alan mentioned about having a longer block of time. I don't know that we need to beat this around the bush again. As far as inconvenience goes, it's very well publicized when it would happen a long time in advance. And for some people, it's inconvenient to do it on a Monday night as well. So I mean, if you all want to have this as an agenda item and talk about it, we've got a lot to do on the 16th. And rescheduling town meeting at this point is not something that I would entertain as an important thing to do. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but the time to speak up was a long time ago, back in early April, when we were discussing when we would do this. Actually, even before that, we discussed it. So I'm not saying no, that we can't have that on the agenda. If you really want to have it on the agenda, but we have a lot to do on the 16th.
One of the reasons that we chose that date was so that it could be outdoors if COVID was worse.
Good. It was. But to change things now, Ann, is so much that has been publicized about that date. And people are aware of it. they're aware of it enough so that they can complain about it. And that's a height of awareness in this town. I'm not trying to belittle their complaints, but I feel like it's something that should have been vetted when we set the date. And my own feeling is the date's set. I won't change in that regard. And I feel like it's bringing an agenda item of controversy into the 16th, that when we've got so many things that are already controversial in that agenda. So I don't have such strong feelings that I would say, no, I would not allow that to happen as chair. With the fact that we've opened agenda to all the board has been working really well, and I'll take whatever the board wants to do, but my own feeling is that's a non-starter for me. And I don't want to talk further about that in any detail tonight. I'm sorry. It's 10:30. I'm getting on to it's 10:30. I think we're all really tired. So Eli, you can either talk about it or you can move to adjourn.
So
I saw the Eli move forward thing that indicates that you want to say something.
So you can take comments about whether or not we should take it up as an agenda item offline email, right?
For sure.
Unless, well, we can do it as part of the discussion. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote. Ann?
Yes.
Eli?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Thank you. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Mhm.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.